Greetings and God's peace be with you. My name is Kristofer Lindh-Payne and I'm one of the co-rectors at St. Francis Episcopal Parish and Community Center. In one of our appointed scripture readings for today, we read in John's Gospel account in chapter 12, where Jesus said to his disciples, "Very truly I tell you, unless a grain of wheat falls into the earth and dies, it remains just a single grain, but if it dies, it bears much fruit." It's reading this passage today that brings me out again into my backyard, into a landscape that you may remember from past video recordings. But the most prominent memory I have of being out here is standing before this incredible crop of monarda, of bee balm. I recorded a message to you all back in July, and this garden was just bursting with new life. I was pretty sick with COVID at the time, but to see all of the bees and the butterflies and the insects, and just putting my face in that as I spoke to you about the beauties of creation and how we are connected and all that. We are in a different season of the natural cycle of life, very firmly planted in the season of fall as leaves are changing and beginning to drop to the ground, as we're picking and eating apples perhaps, and drinking cider, and going out to harvest pumpkins. Maybe those are some of the fall type things that you're doing. It both brings me joy to see all of this, and it also makes me sad to think about how beautiful it was, and really how that plant has changed in time. So I'm hoping in the next few days to dig up a bunch of this and bring it out to St. Francis and to plant it in and around our grounds. I know that a lot of members of our green team have been thinking about what the perennial plants we can plant, the native species of things that is really going to be good for all of the creatures that inhabit the area in which we worship and learn and serve and grow together. But I've just been thinking a lot about this natural cycle of things. Some of you may have heard me talk about the life cycle of organizations, a model that some of us learned when we went out to the College for Congregational Development. And in my new role on diocesan staff as Canon for Congregational Vitality, I've been thinking a lot about this model. There's a picture of that goes along with this video recording, but everything begins with birth, and then we're formed into new life, and we grow and become vital. As you go up the line, you take a sharp turn into stability, and it's so easy to really shift without even realizing it into stagnation and staleness. And if you're not paying attention, you can turn a corner into decline and disintegration, and before you know it, you could find yourself in patterns of death. For anybody that gardens or just watches the natural world around you, you can see those patterns, but they happen within congregations and organizations of all kinds. When we're not paying attention, it can happen in the blink of an eye. But we can also do things to really order our lives and our practices the way that we're called to be disciples and leaders in that really that shape and reshape us. When we go back to Jesus' passage in John about this grain of wheat that dies, unless it does, it cannot become something more. Well, for us as a parish and community center, when we learn, and this is my favorite part of the model, when we learn to turn back sooner, when we learn to practice renewal, it brings us back to the beginning, back to formation. And when we form disciplines that help us to turn back sooner and sooner, it helps us to let go of the way that things were, to embrace new realities, and to come back to what God is calling us to in this moment. As I think about this beautiful bee balm that's behind me, all of the new life that it was, and think about all of the new life that it can be, not only here in my backyard, but at St. Francis and perhaps in other places as it's spread by the great pollinators that are our sisters and brothers, the bees. It makes me think about what I am being called to do as a steward of this place, of all creation, what I'm called to do as a steward of my body and mind and soul. What are the things that I'm being called to let go of so that that I can embrace this pattern, this cycle, this natural cycle of birth and life and death, so that the power of Christ can continue to flow through us. When I think about the colors that I remember, the vibrancy, and all that can be, again, in the roots from the seeds, it's hard to let go of it, but it is what God calls us to do. And when we learn to let go, those seeds find their way into the places that they need to, and new growth, possibility bursts onto the scene. For you, as you ponder this cycle in your life, sometimes it's really painful when we have to let go of things or people that we love, parts of ourselves even. But in that, God meets us and invites us to find comfort and strength in the cycle of birth and of life and of death and of resurrection again. Jesus is with us in that, and he shows us the way to walk in, the way of love that calls us to let go and embrace God in new and powerful ways. As a parish and community center here at St. Francis, it amazes me to see all of the ways that we are coming to life, that we're learning to let go, and that we're learning to let God grow through us. As our roots dig down deep, and we find ways of digging up parts of ourselves and planting them in other places, perhaps, but the ways that the seeds propagate and make their way out into the world around us. Serving on diocesan staff, I'm seeing that in all sorts of powerful ways as lessons that we've learned together are being brought to bear in other contexts, as other disciples and leaders get to learn from the things that we're doing, the mistakes that we make, the successes we have, and how God is faithful and present to us and all that. I'm so glad to be a part of this community with you, and as we continue to grow and pattern our lives after the God who came to live among us, to live and die and be resurrected. We thank you for all of the gifts that you share, for the seeds that we are planting, the harvest that we're bringing in, and for just for your presence. Until next time, Christ's peace be with you.